Right, welcome Pat McGart from foreign parts. No, not foreign parts, the same state, but you're not at home today.
No, I moved down to the wilds of County Cavan.
Oh,
Uh, and there's a lake outside, Jude, and the weather, there's clouds drifting by, so the light in this room can go up and down very quickly. So,
uh, oh, you
you
look
know,
fine. You look fine now. Is it true that they eat their dinner out of a drawer down there?
yeah, my dear wife has this theory. We went into a shop. No, if you go to a shop in Donegal and ask for a wrap, or a baguette, they'll
Yeah.
pile it full of stuff. We went into one not too far away, and talk about being miserly with the filling. Now, in fairness, it was the other side of the border in Fermanagh, but
Yeah.
we looked at it and going, "Is that the best you can do for whatever is 5 quid?" But anyway,
Anyway, let's talk about much more important matters than food. There's two topics here. The first thing we want to talk about today is this notion of the Shared Ireland Forum that's been put forward by, well, first of all, by Micheál Martin was the one that mentioned it. He said he was setting up some sort of a forum, and then
yeah.
Colm Eastwood has latched onto it, and he's saying that they're going to work on it and they're going to have it. I want to say, first of all, Pat, before you get started, I think it's the stupidest bloody title I've heard for anything in a long time. A shared Ireland. Well,
Wait,
you've been sharing Ireland for the last 100 years, if not 800 years.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the conditions under which you share it.
Yeah. Well, you see, I don't have a problem with it because I know what they're trying to say. But what I really think I think it's a wrong term. John Hume and Martin McGuinness both used the term that an agreed Ireland.
That's different. That's different.
Yeah, exactly. But a shared island. We have shared the island, as you rightly said, since the plantation of Ulster. So what's that? 500 years ago or so. So there's been two communities or two groups or two tribes or whatever you want to call them on this island, and we have shared the island for those centuries. So to call it a shared island, I don't know. I'm not even sure where that's going to go, but I think at this stage, agreed Ireland. Like Martin McGuinness and John Hume both said that there's 1 million Protestants or Unionists on this island, and we have to make some sort of an agreement that acknowledges them and all the rest of it. But the onus is on them as well to acknowledge the fact that there's about 5 million people of a different persuasion. You can put a different hue on it, but that they're entitled to their opinion as well.
Exactly. And I noticed that Colm Eastwood has been very quick out of the blocks to say that, in effect, that they would lead it, that the Sdlp would lead it, I suppose, the Sdlp plus Fianna Fáil, but Sinn Féin couldn't because they are toxic to unionism. Is this a northern version of a Micheál's thing where you couldn't possibly have Sinn Féin in government in the south because, all sorts of stuff? Is this another version of this whenever they're talking about a shared Ireland forum?
I was at a meeting in Derry about 2 years ago, and Colm Eastwood was there, and there were representatives of Sinn Féin. It was sort of a private meeting. And in fairness to Eastwood, he said the same to him there and then. He said, listen, he says, I'm not trying to be offensive. He says, but if you guys try and lead this, he says, I can give you a guarantee there'll be no engagement. He says, he says, for most unions to be, I'm paraphrasing, by the way, and I'm putting words in his mouth, so let's get that on the record. But basically what he was saying was that if Shinners come along and said to leading members of the unionist loyalist community come along, talk to us about United Ireland, that the first person to do it would probably find themselves thrown over the nearest bridge. Whereas whatever, the acceptable face of the Sdlp might get further.
Hi, well, I can see that possibility in terms of getting the thing started. But where are they going to allow Sinn Féin in the door? I mean, if they don't let Sinn Féin in the door, it won't be worth a penny candle, as somebody once said, Fergus Finlay said. They have to. I mean, are they going to keep them outside the door all the time? Are they going to bring them in at the end? Are they going to bring them in the middle? What's the thinking?
No, that's impossible. 535,000 people voted Sinn Féin in the last election in the Republic. They're the biggest nationalist party in the North. You simply can't wish that away. But what I take it, and I'm not 100% certain because I read on the Irish Times this morning what Eastwood said, and what it's basically saying is, or my interpretation is that unionists, if we want to get this thing about talks underway, he feels that Sinn Féin are the wrong people to lead that. Now, where they pull in the point, and say, come on, Sinn Féin, you're on board. But there can be no discussion. It's like saying somewhere in America, you're going to have a discussion about it, but we can't talk to the Democratic Party. And, it's the same sort of thing. But it's interesting the fact that Micheál Martin, Jude, we were chatting the last day, and I am firmly of the opinion Micheál Martin is the least Republican leader that I think I've ever seen in my lifetime. And he is the leader of Fianna Fáil, the Republican Party. He, as I said the last day, he's running away faster from a unity debate than Usain Bolt does in the Olympic Games. He has reached that stage, that he doesn't want to talk about it. He's got some issue with it. I think he's almost got that deep south thing that a lot of people down south, we don't want. No, they're scared of the north. They're scared of the whole thing. And I think they are really, really, I can't use the term that's going through my head, about anything starting in the north and shifting down south.
Well, my own thinking is that I do welcome actually the initiative. I don't like the term shared Ireland for the reasons that I've explained, but I do welcome the fact that somebody is talking about, whether it's Fianna Fáil or whether it's Sdlp or both of them, about something that will move us towards considering how will Ireland look in the future, how will it be organised, and so on. I think that's great. But I think at the back of this initiative, which is an Sdlp Fianna Fáil initiative, there's both parties are sort of scrambling to get something to hang on to, because they know this upsurge in interest and realisation that it's important to plan for the future Ireland. They know that they have to be in that. And yet at the same time, you can tell that they want to keep it so mild that none of the unionist parties will take a fainting fit because they're talking about something other than status quo.
Yeah. To keep going with the athletics analogy, have you ever watched a marathon? Sometimes the guy with the fastest finish deliberately goes to the front very early on to slow the race down so that the other ones have to sort of stay with him. Mm-hmm. And I think that what Fianna Fáil and the Sdlp are doing here is deliberately getting out in front, and then they can control the race. In other words, in this case, they can control the debate. So in other words, make it as anodyne and as sort of, I were talking, it's, that overused phrase, kicking the can down the road. Well, this is kicking the can down the road for maybe another decade or so, or a couple of decades. But if we get in Sdlp, Fianna Fáil, and we set the parameters of the debate, we can string it out. How long's a piece of string? You can keep talking, and nothing gets done.
I think that's where your race analogy breaks down.
Yeah, that's it.
Because they want to dictate the pace of the race to the point where there never will be an end to it.
That's a certain. You could keep on going. I'll have to think that one through.
As I say, I've got mixed feelings on it. I don't like the title. I do like the idea of initiative, which is going to look at this whole thing of a future Ireland. But I really think it's a fatal flaw to start telling people that they're toxic. Now, in practice, I go along with that idea about somebody else writing an initiative, and I'm delighted to know that there's other people besides Sinn Féin that are interested in a united Ireland. But to be starting by telling one party that they're toxic, I don't like the sound of that, It does suggest leaning over backways to, say the kind of things that unionism might say about Sinn Féin before they even say it.
But hold on, Jude. The other, I take your point. But can you imagine if somebody, like the UDA or UVF, or even some of the more hardline DUP people came to the nationalist community and say, "Look, here we want to start talking to you about why you should be British." It wouldn't. Now, if somebody else came along and said, "Look, I want to talk about how we can share and be, accept," you might sort of thought and say, "Right, go on, run it by me, see what you." So there's a certain element of that in it.
Well, that may be all right. I think you're being too charitable. I think myself that the Sdlp and Fianna Fáil are desperate for something to hang on to, some sort of initiative that makes them look lively. And I'll leave it at this point with regard to this particular discussion. Micheál Martin was a very glad man to get up north and start talking about something different. after he'd been listening to
Absolutely.
your man, his
Barry Cowan
Barry Cowan and
and
the total
front,
screw up.
front bench.
Oh,
Yeah.
what a disastrous start for any coalition. Okay, let's try the other one, the other topic, Pat, which was green travel. You titled it a green travel list.
Yeah.
I just say this. I think it's a master class in how to confuse people.
Jude, you know, someone you're ahead of me. Absolutely. I was listening to on the drive up here to Cavan today. There was a bit of a discussion on one of the current affairs programs. And Jude, I am now totally confused. I mean, totally. I don't know. Green is for go. That's not usually what it means at the traffic lights.
Yeah.
So, like, apparently we're being told that now the Taoiseach is still out in Brussels because they're negotiating this package to get Europe working again, and Ireland, of which Ireland's going to be a net contributor to that. Isn't that wonderful? You know, we're getting that brilliantly with COVID and all the rest of it. But anyway, we're going to be contributing to help other people. But the bottom line is there'll be no discussions on it today. But apparently, if you're Irish, you should not be going to Britain, and you should not be going to America. Those are the two economies that are the big ones for us. But here's the point. There's this place called Northern Ireland, which is allegedly part of Britain. So all those English people who really shouldn't be coming here can go over to Belfast and drive down to Donegal or drive down to Kerry or drive down. So, you know, there's sort of a backdoor entrance. So the whole thing is totally and utterly confusing. The other thing, Jude, let me, while we're here, this morning, my wife went into a shop in just at Fermanagh and outside of Enniskillen. Nobody was wearing a mask. Here, as from today, it's illegal not to wear a mask in a shop or a public place. So on the one island, and we're supposed to have some sort of agreed protocols and all the rest. There's two, and literally in the space of about 10 miles, two very different approaches. So go and tell me, you know, if you're not confused, what are you?
Well, you see, the thing that was announced was to be announced in the south was that there would be green countries. That's countries you could go to where it would be safe to go and come back again. But then I think, were you being asked to quarantine yourself for a fortnight afterwards?
There's supposed to be these green countries where you can go in, and when you come back, you won't have to quarantine.
You won't have to quarantine yourself. Well, in the north, you can go to, it seems to be quite a few countries, because Paula Bradshaw of the Alliance Party announced that she was going to go to Italy with her family. Yeah. And she said about how hard they'd been working, all of them, I suppose. And that they really felt the need for a holiday, and when they came back, they would quarantine themselves for a fortnight. Now, again, if you're asking, you're trying to find a way to make people confused. The government's saying, or the administration are saying, we would recommend that you don't travel. And then at the same time they say, but you can travel, and then we'd like you to have lockdown after that, but we're not forcing you to. It's crazy. I really think they should say definitively, look, these are the countries you can go to if you're going to go, and you can go ahead and then come back, but you'll have to do quarantine. Or else you should say, don't go. We don't want anybody to go, and the law is telling you now, don't do it. Because people, it's like saying to people, we'd quite like you to wear your seatbelt, or we'd quite like you not to drink 2 or 3 pints of Guinness before you get into your car.
Jude, this whole thing, when it's advisory, it's half in, half out, you know, and it's really very, very confusing for people. But Jude, you know, I think I'd love to know what countries actually are safe to go. Apparently, Greece. You can go to Greece, and we can go to New Zealand. Now, the chances of getting into New Zealand are about 0. So like, the whole thing is an absolute mess.
I think
go ahead.
Sorry, Pat, I was going to say, I think people should just forget about travelling outside Ireland. I mean, take a holiday at home, do a staycation, and help the economy at home for a start, rather than running risk of and all the complications of going off. I was watching, this seems off the topic, but it is a parallel. I was watching an episode of Hillary. There's a 4-part documentary on Sky Atlantic, I think it is, or Sky Documentaries about Hillary Clinton. And it shows you a bit in her campaign to get the nomination for the Democratic Party with Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders came out and said, we will give free, no tuition fees for college attendance, college education. No tuition fees. And then they asked Hillary, and she said, well, we'll do even better than that. We'll organize it so that people are not in debt. And when they're in, if they are in debt, and she, on her own admission, she complicated the thing. She said she was trying to, I tell you what she was saying was probably very reasonable, but it wasn't cutting through. It wasn't a clear message. And I think the same thing applies here with this thing about travel and so on. It's not that maybe their plans aren't good, or not that their regulations or encouragements aren't good, but the thing is they're not clear. And for a public to act, they've got to be absolutely crystal clear.
Jude, that's the whole thing. Everything is now totally confused. Jude, shut up. I don't know what the rules are in England anymore, because I was watching yesterday morning, I keep forgetting what he called this, the Foreign Secretary, Rab, and then the ministers there are contradicting each other. You have a Prime Minister who I think has totally lost the plot. In Dublin, we don't know now, because we have one expert saying you should wear a mask, the other one saying you shouldn't, and there are all sorts of conspiracy theorists coming on saying about why you should. And the whole thing, I couldn't agree more with you. I think it's time that somebody sat down and said, right, wait a minute, here is the clear guidelines and all that. By the way, one other thing, Jude, I was listening to a guy on quite recently, and apparently, I don't know how true this is, but say me and you decide we'd head off to Spain for a week. Apparently, Spain is not on the green list, and we go off and we contact COVID, we are not covered by insurance. So in other words, if you need a plane to fly you back, or you need a massive health cover or whatever, you're not covered by insurance. But even that is not clear. But there was a guy on one day and he said it's most definitely the case that if the government advises that you don't go there and you do, you are no longer covered by insurance. That gives your insurance company an opt-out. So
maybe it's a generation thing, Pat. Maybe it's just that I'm old and many of the people who want to go off are young or middle-aged. But it just doesn't seem to me to make sense. So you weigh up in the balance, you say, I'd love a holiday in Italy. Yeah. Right, that's grand. So what are the other side of it? Well, I might get COVID, or I might pass it on to somebody else, or I might, God knows what, in terms of insurance. So what decision do I take? The very obvious decision to my mind is stay where you are.
At home. Yeah, exactly. Well, we for years, we always, because I'm retired and so is Rosie, we could always go off, usually to Spain, wait for the school season, the peak seasons, to be over, and you can pick up, as most retired people have, you can pick up cheap fares to any part of Spain on off season. This year, we won't be going anywhere. We will be staying at home. And I think that's what a lot of people should be doing.
Do you feel very deprived then? Do you feel like you're being
Jude, I would love to be able to go. Hey, Jude, I like sitting in the sun, drinking a glass of wine and having a good book. But, hey, there are people starving, there are people dying, there are people. I don't think I'm being deprived. There's one thing that sort of, I love to sit with my feet up on a nice desk or something. But, it's not going to kill me to keep my feet on the floor.
Yeah. But you did say now that in your trip down to Cavan that you had a sense of opening up, and it was really very pleasurable to see the countryside.
It's nice. The sun was shining most of the way down. It was good to get out, just to get away to a different environment. And it was really nice. It was just a nice morning's journey. It was really lovely. Mm-hmm. Like, we've been stuck in pretty much for this last 4 or 5 months. We've broke out a couple of times, but this is our first trip away, staying somewhere different, staying overnight. And Jude, I think it's way back in maybe February of the last day we were away. Mm-hmm. So we used to enjoy going off for maybe a day here and a day there. Mm-hmm. Like when you're retired and you've worked for a long time, you feel entitled to these things. But it's not. We're not staying in a 5-star the Tower Hotel in Dubai or anything. This is just ordinary.
Yeah, but supposing you hadn't been able to go today, supposing you weren't allowed to go, or you figured the chances were too dicey for you to do that, do your trip for overnight or whatever, would you have felt that your life was would you have been straining on the leash? Would you have been wanting to get out? Because speaking for
Yeah,
myself, I really, I could do with the trip out, but I don't really care.
yeah, no, I'm much the same. Here, it's like saying, that's a lovely suit, and I would love to buy it, but like, it's not going to affect my life if I don't get it.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
you, you know, you can want something, but it's not going to impact your life massively if you don't get what you want.
Well,
There's a friend of
are
mine used
young
to say
people?
there's a big difference in what you want and what you need.
Yeah. So, do you think our young people gone to the dogs?
Hey,
Young people have gone to the dogs.
it's a terrible generalization, but young people by and large are selfish, and they're not selfish, because I was like, when we're all young once, who was it said that youth is wasted on the young?
Yeah.
When you're young, you want to do everything. You want to go with the best looking girl, get the nicest car, have the nicest suits, have plenty of money. That's part of the maturity of youth.
Restlessness of youth.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I wouldn't blame any young person, male or female, for that.
yeah, yeah. Oh well, oh well. Well, listen, Pat, we'll leave it there. Thank you very
Okay,
much,
good.
and make
Thank
sure
you,
you
sir.
enjoy yourself down there now.
Yes,
And
I certainly will.
insist on having your dinner on a table, not in a drawer. Okay.
Talk about stereotyping.
Okay, Pat. All the best.